which was over 8%, and that is inflationary. However, there's a new narrative going on in the market with investors regarding how the CPI is constructed. 40% is in shelter, and shelter stats are notoriously long dated. In other words, the numbers you're seeing now reflect the shelter market, the housing market, the apartment rental market 18 months ago when it was smoking hot. That is not the case in major cities now. Rent increases have slowed down, housing prices have softened as mortgages have increased, and yet it's not reflected yet. So it's a little bit of saying I want to change the data set now because I don't believe it anymore. That's kind of one narrative. But even though it's sitting at over 8%, the market is willing to fibrillate, waiting for more earnings validation that we actually have a slowdown. It's simply not there yet. And so if the Fed keeps using this 8% number and keeps ratcheting rates, they will overshoot. I don't think so. I agree with you. I have another index, Las Vegas, which I've never seen it fuller than it was last week at the Web3 conference. You couldn't walk in the aisles. It was so jam-packed. Casinos jam-packed, restaurants jam-packed, traffic jam-packed. So that pent-up demand is certainly there. Recessions start traditionally with a rise in unemployment. Haven't seen that yet either. If you're in the food services industries on either coast, where in California, for example, the minimum wage is $15, you can't even hire people for $23 an hour now. They don't even want to work. So that cash that's flushing around the system is still having an effect there. It's not clear how the poo-poo hits the fan on this one yet, but the market has made a decision. The corrections in the S&P 500 have been brutal and fast in every single sector. And so the market, generally speaking, is never wrong forever. And what it anticipates is a sharp decline in earnings, because right now the PE, if we believe the earnings for next year, is sitting between 14.5% and 15%. Well, that's getting close to a bottom. I mean, you could argue the bottom would be 12x, which is really, really low earnings for the S&P. But here we are at 15. I'd argue it's time to start nibbling. You can't guess the bottom, but my goodness, just on a strong index basis, you could go into this market saying to yourself, regardless what the correction is, 2/3 of it's baked in. Well, in the polls, and all of us buy services that are investing to get this data every day, they're about 6 seats ahead. I've learned in the past that means nothing. There's no guarantees on anything. But right now, that would be the House. You can't call the Senate. So let's say the House flipped. The good news on that is all new bills, all new initiatives that are not bipartisan bills, in other words, ram-a-jamma down your throat bills like the student debt thing, ram-a-jamma bill like anti-inflation bill. I mean, nobody wanted to vote for that on the other side of the aisle. So those kinds of bills are dead for the rest of this presidency. There'll be total gridlock. And that is a good thing. The markets love gridlock. Markets like a pause that refreshes. We need a pause. The printing presses have gone insane, and that's why we have inflation in the first place. I mean, for all the talk about inflation, you print $6.72 trillion in 30 months. What the hell did you think was going to happen? Of course there's going to be inflation. Yep, you're right. That's a difficult challenge for Biden. I don't think anybody's going to give him A+ for foreign affairs at this point. Been a lot of mixed signals. We started with the Green Initiative in the US. We gave up our oil independence. That blew up in everybody's face in the form of high gasoline prices. Now he's talking to dictators in Venezuela, flying over to see the Saudis, asking them not to stop production. They don't care. It's obvious. That's not great. But at the same time, it does make us do a little soul searching in the US about getting back to energy independence. And there's a lot of pressure on that, given what's going on in Germany. So all of this ends up being a market consideration. Right now, oil is being capped in price by those bears that are concerned about a global recession and use of energy. But not every country is buoyant with the consumer as the US is, because the US dollars cause lots of headaches in other currencies. You know, when you look at the value of currencies in other nations against the US, it's getting very tough for them. And so there's a lot of cross currents here, but right now, people are focused on the Fed, they're focused on the midterms, and all of this is going to play out in the next 5 weeks. So stay tuned. It's going to get really interesting. I love the British parliamentary system. I'm very familiar with how it works. And in fact, there's lots of precedent for prime ministers that come in, make a fatal mistake right out of the gate, as she did on this corporate tax thing and personal tax thing, and then get whacked immediately. They lose the support of their caucus. In the parliamentary system, the only way you become the prime minister, that's like the queen bee, you're elevated to that position for one reason, so that you can fill out your caucus, your cabinet. You choose the cabinet members. You're the orchestra leader. But if you choose cabinet members like finance or exchequer and all of these other important positions in the British system, and they don't like you, they turn on you like a rabid dog and they throw you out with a confidence vote. That happens all the time. Now, what's holding this one back is they're not sure they'd win a general election given all the, snafus they've had. But I love Downing Street. I love the chaos in parliamentary systems. I really enjoy it. And it's the outcome's unknown, but obviously she backpedaled, and it has brought a little stability to the credit markets in the UK. But this is the kind of thing, people think politicians are infallible. They're not. They make lots of mistakes, and there's a good example of how that happened. Sure, I mean, there was a huge change in the direction of capital going into crypto in the last 6 months. So what's changed now is most of the investors that are willing to take the highly speculative investments, and some of them are large, a new deal called Mysten, M-Y-S-T-E-N, just got funded. Evan Chung was the name of the fellow who left Facebook. He was doing their digital currency. He took the whole team, set up a new company, raised $300 million in 45 minutes, basically without a deck. FTX was the lead investor at $100 million. I put money into that deal. He is promising a new blockchain to service financial transactions at 10 times the speed of anything else out there. And we do need that. So there's a lot of interest. But there's an example of a have company that really has no revenue. It's just starting its journey with now 300 million. It was almost 6x oversubscribed. The rest of the crypto market that came out of the DeFi space has been obliterated. And financings there are being done in crammed down rounds, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% less than the last round. Very, very difficult. If the company's not profitable, there's not a lot of investor appetite for it. So you have the haves and the have-nots. In addition to that, the whole Web3 movement, which was what that whole conference was about, is more towards mass adoption. Everybody that's investing money into that is trying to solve for the wallet, number one. Number two, security. And number three, regulation. Those are the three horsemen of the new Web3 movement. Mass adoption through regulation, through security, and a much easier to use wallet. The best analogy I can give you, until your grandmother can figure out how to buy Bitcoin on her cell phone, we don't have a wallet that works yet. It has to pass the grandmother test. Selling those and basically buying what I consider the granddaddy index of all crypto, Bitcoin. So I can go through the tax season owning more Bitcoin, I will, maybe a little bit more Ethereum, but basically the large market cap names are the ones that matter. So if you're going to do a basket of names to hold through the back end of the year, I would say it's going to be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, Solana. Those are huge market cap names, and I think are going to index together. I don't think any one of those breaks out of the pack. They all kind of trade in tandem. So if you're only going to own one, it's probably going to be Bitcoin, but all the rest trade in tandem with Bitcoin anyways.